So far away, Lucas and lovely audience at home, this is the first Wiki Weekends video to take place in the month of October 2024. So I thought, let's get into the spirit. Literally, because it's spooky season, and talk about an obscure spooky video game called Obscure. And before we delve into the wiki on what might be the most aptly named horror video game in existence, Obscure, this is spooky season, and this is Wiki Weekends, where we, scour the lengths and breadths of the internet to find a wiki on a subject we're interested in, and then talk about it. But, Lucas, you're not the biggest horror fan, no?
Not particularly. I do play some horror games, not many, but then horror films I'm just really not about.
Whereas I love horror films. So what we're doing for this month is, towards the end of the month, myself and Lucas were doing special themed episodes, like, centered around spooky things, decided on by you, our audience. And if you would like to help influence the topic of those videos, you can pop over to our Patreon right now, provided you're still watching this in October of 2024, and vote on what subjects I'm going to talk about and what subject Lucas is going to talk about. And I'm more the horror guy, so I've got a bunch of movies there that you can vote on, and Lucas has a bunch of video games you can vote on.
I'm not quite decided which games they're going to be. However, I can tell you there's probably going to be something Resident Evil related to vote on.
But Lucas, that is neither here nor there, because today we're talking about Obscure. And how familiar are you with the video game Obscure?
I feel like it might be one of those weird horror games that you've mentioned off the cuff at some point, but I really don't know what this is.
Well, it's interesting because it's very difficult to search for, because if you put in obscure horror game for the PS2, Obscure doesn't come up. So for anyone out there like Lucas is like, wait, what is this video game? Well, thankfully, the beauty of Wiki Weekends is that we can all get on the same page, specifically this wiki page, by just simply going through it now. So, Obscure is a survival horror game developed by Hydra Vision Entertainment. And they are marker quality. I've never fucking heard of those guys.
No, the SEO on that game is not great, is it?
And published by Dreamcatcher Interactive for the PlayStation 2. It was released in 2004 in Europe and 2005 in North America. So for Americans, they got it a year later than us, much like Marvel movies.
I mean, like, the Marvel thing nowadays is only a few days,
Yeah.
right? But, like, a year later is weird, and I do really hope that you're going to mention this game was released, like, in fucking March or something. I love when horror games don't release around spooky season.
Yeah, it was released on October 1st in Europe, so, quite fittingly released. It's a horror game released in the spookiest of seasons, and in America, they released it in April. Presumably because they didn't want to wait like the 4 extra months to get to October or what have you. But the story focuses on 5 senior high school students at a private school, Leafmore High, who stumble upon a laboratory where experiments are being done on selected individuals of a student body. Their mission is to rescue their missing friend, Kenny, warn the school, save their teachers, and get out alive.
Oh, you fell for it too.
Fell for what?
You don't get it? We've got to get you out of here quick.
Okay, let's bolt.
My familiarity with this game is I played through it in its entirety a decade ago with a friend from school who just had it on his PS2, because it's like a co-op survival horror game.
Don't abandon me, whatever you do. He's nuts.
I won't.
Which it already is weird, right? Of like, it's a survival horror game where you can play on a single screen with 2 players, and there's 5 playable characters, and it's got a bunch of, and the gimmick is all the characters can interact differently, so you get different cutscenes based on which 2 characters you happen to be playing as at that moment.
Yes, so I do think you mentioned this in a discussion, something John Carpenter related.
Mm-hmm.
Has this got anything to do with John Carpenter, or was that just part of that discussion?
It was part of the discussion about The Thing. I think we've mentioned
Right.
The Thing on a podcast or something like that. We were talking about, just what's an obscure piece of horror media, and I mentioned this because it's literally called Obscure, and it was one of those things where I pulled it out of the depths of my brain, and it's a very interesting game, or at least it was interesting as far as I can remember, which I'm excited to go through the wiki now to see what parts of it I remember and what parts I don't. Because the one thing I do recall is that it had a very specific tone, and that tone was, it opens almost like an American Pie movie. And I say that because the literal front of the box, below the name of the game, says featuring music by Sum 41.
Oh, yes, it's
that game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't tell you what the game's about. It just says obscure, spooky monster featuring music by Sum 41.
Of course, the exact soundtrack you'd want to a spooky game.
I found really interesting. So let's go through what the hell's going on. So story. I'm just going to do a brief overview of the story now. So Kenny Matthews, a jock and popular high school basketball player, stays late in the school gym to shoot some hoops. Ashley Thompson, his girlfriend, calls him and diverts his attention from the mysterious figure running off with his gym bag.
Ashley, no. You know me better than that. I just finished practice. Just a quick shower and I'll be right there.
Good. And don't be late this time. See you, baby.
Kenny pursues a thief and is led behind an iron gate leading to an old spooky mansion. In the basement, he finds a secret passageway that leads to an underground corridor. He discovers glass cases with plants and other experimental subjects. He opens a sealed locked door at the end of the hall to find Dan, a student who has been used as a guinea pig for experiments and locked in the underground lab. Kenny convinces Dan to leave with him, but they are attacked by a giant mutated creature. Dan gives his life to allow Kenny to escape, hurrying up the ladder at the end of the corridor. Kenny is then locked in by a mysterious figure, and that's like the opening to the game to teach you the mechanics.
Now, what I am going to say
Yes.
is it does suck if your shit gets stolen, but when the thief then runs into a giant, spooky, abandoned mansion, maybe give it up.
Yeah, it's that thing of like, unless it had my phone, but this is like a game set in like the 2000s, you've not got a phone. In which case, what was in my bag? Oh, well, you know, my dirty, and he's a high school student, so let's be honest, his dirty, shit-stained trousers. Like, there's some skid marks in there. It's like, does he really give that much of a fuck? Would you follow him into a big spooky mansion? I think not.
No.
As mentioned, this is a co-op horror survival game, and it's very interesting because I can't think of any other game out there that tries to do what Obscure does. I can think of games that do something similar, like an example that springs to mind is like The Quarry or Until Dawn, where it's like, you know, it's basically a teenage horror movie that you can control, you know, some aspects of.
I don't like being watched.
Better?
Go suck an egg. Now it's better.
Yeah, and I really enjoy those two games specifically, but I do like, even though they're games of, you know, varied quality, I like the fact that Supermassive Games are making a push towards making all of their horror games co-op.
Yes, and like they are co-op, but like they're not split screen co-op, right? Although I think you can do like the pass the controller thing with some of those games. Right? I remember like Until Dawn, you can do the whole pass the controller to a friend, and you like throw it across the room. Oh god, now I messed up.
Yeah, I love that, and you know, we'll obviously cover those games at some point because I just love the idea of, oh well, each of you are responsible for a couple of characters, see who survives.
Yeah, and like, you know, the game, similar in tone to Obscure, from what I remember of Obscure. Like I say, it's based like a teenage romance, and then just Silent Hill happens, and that's like Until Dawn, right? Because the first couple of hours of Until Dawn are setting up the characters. Like you have like Rami Malek turn on like, let's party like porn stars, dude. Or like when the girls are fighting, it's like, taste the back of my hand, bitch. Which is such a good line.
Just trying to understand. Understand the palm of my hand, bitch.
Spoilers for like the beginning of Until Dawn, I guess, but that kind of opening scene where it shows what happened the year prior, I think that might be the most horrific thing in that entire video.
It's very scary, yeah. It's like, it's really good at tone setting. That's what I remember about Obscure. Like I said, of like that initial bit of running through the tunnels and getting chased by a big spooky monster. Ah!
I didn't mean horror-wise. I just meant in terms of the prank that they pull on that girl to
that's
get herself killed.
Yeah, that's a bad one, right? And you would feel bad.
Oh,
Hell yeah.
Oh my god. She's taking her shirt off. What? Oh my god. Matt, what are you doing here?
Hannah.
I'm sorry, Hannah.
Hey,
This all got out of
just
hand, but...
And that's one of the things that the games deal with. It's evocative of many classic, or at least classic now, tropes of, you know, that particular subgenre of horror. Like, it's very like I Know What You Did Last Summer-esque. Like, you know, there's a bunch of teenagers who are, you know, they're friends, and then they stop being friends, but they're still joined by a dark secret.
Hannah!
What's going on? Where's my sister going?
It's fine. She just can't take a joke.
It was just a prank, Han. What did you do?
We're just messing around, Beth. It wasn't serious.
You jerks!
This was your idea!
What?
Hey! Guys, we have to go to the police.
And tell them what? That it was a big joke?
It was an accident.
Was it?
Similarly, Obscure takes, you know, some prompts from like other horror media, and like I say, it's just imagine you're watching like American Pie, but halfway through, Stifler accidentally stumbles into Silent Hill, and that's the game or the tone, right? Which sounds pretty good. And one of the cool things about the game, you know, it's a game released in the 2000s. It has multiple endings. Specifically 2. You can't expect that many, right? But there are multiple variations of things that can happen throughout the game, but you have one of 2 endings that you can get: the good ending and the bad ending. And the good ending is basically if you do a perfect run and keep everyone alive, where the bad ending is if one of your player characters dies. And there are multiple ways the playable characters can die. It happens a lot when I played the game, because, you know, me and my friend didn't really know what we were doing.
Stan! No!
We kept losing our characters, because we only played as the girls, and only played with baseball bats. It's like, let's fucking go. We're playing Buffy the Vampire Slayer Simulator now.
Oh god, but I imagine it was probably quite janky tank controls, like a lot of horror games back in PS2 era.
It is, yes. And, you know, we're not going to talk too much about the story, because I would recommend people go out there and play. I'm going to be tempted to track down a copy to play myself. Because as I said, I played this 10 years ago, and it's just one of the things that's always stuck in my brain. It's been very interesting. Is there a game
I'm really
like that for
sorry,
you?
Carl. I'm so sorry.
It's probably going to be bad, right?
No, I'm just going to let you know. It was probably more like 20 years ago at this point.
Oh, it was. It was released in 2003. But I played it when I was in college, which was in 2010, so it's close to 15 years now. But Luke, is there a game like that for you where it's just an obscure video game from your past that you remember playing, remember really liking, and then just never saw ever again because it wasn't popular?
It's hard to think, isn't it, really? Because, like, obviously it's obscure and I've never seen it again, so there probably is something like that. There's definitely like a lot of games that I played as a kid, like that no one else fucking remembered were a thing.
Yeah, I mention a bunch of them on the channel all the time. Like, one for me is like Future Cop LAPD, which isn't by any stretch of the imagination a good game, but it's one of the only games I had for my PlayStation 1, so I played it a lot. And that also had couch co-op, and you just play as 2 robot police officers.
This is X1 Alpha, LAPD's best weapon in the war against crime. The crime lord's edge and firepower is over. Now you've got the weapons to serve, protect, and survive.
And the thing I remember about that game is its really wry sense of humour.
Now, if you're playing by yourself, you'll go up against Sky Captain, a lethal combination of smarts and firepower. This cybernetic genius can do everything you can do and more. He's got his own reloaders and can link with his base to generate units remotely. And every time you beat Sky Captain, he gets a little tougher. Oh, about the radar. The red arrow points to the red base, the blue one towards the blue base. Whoopee.
Like where it has a tutorial for the multiplayer, where it says like, if you've got no friends, you can play against our AI, and every time you beat the AI, you get stronger. And just it had a very specific tone that I remember to this day.
When one of your hover tanks enters the enemy base, you win. Sounds simple? I don't think so!
What a sight.
I hope nobody saw that.
LAPD, put your hands where I can see them.
Yeah, and I don't consider this game obscure, don't get me wrong in the comments. Like, I do not think it's an obscure game, but every single time I mention one of my favourite GameCube games as a kid to people, I'm like, do you remember Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg? And every fucker's like, what the hell is that game?
I remember hearing about it and thinking that sounds stupid, I'm not going to play it, but I'm aware of its reputation as a good game people liked. But from like when I had my GameCube as a younger man, a teenager, all I had on my GameCube was Black and Bruised and Def Jam Fight for New York.
Oh, you didn't have like Reckless, the Yakuza Warriors or something
Yeah,
like
that. No, but I had Def Jam Fight for New York, which I think explains a lot about me.
For real, son. Oh my god. Oh, nice counter. Wait a minute, though. He's trying to make it. The machine gun punch. Oh, no. Luda. We stopped playing.
Hey, shake my hand, cuz.
I remember me and my brother would just make playable characters who look like each other. Oh, I meant like super huge buff version of myself. My brother would make the really skinny version. And he'd always make him wear like a backwards baseball hat and give him the sneer and like, eh.
Oh god. I think like instead of obscure games, a lot of my childhood games were just the bad license games that were just, 2 out of 10s, like the Robot Wars game and the Beyblade game and stuff like this that just shouldn't have been made, but guess what? Kids like me were buying it anyway.
Yeah, it's like, you didn't know what quality was when you're a kid, right? You don't read reviews when you're a kid because, hey, a game magazine costs £5 and I don't care what this adult thinks about this game. I think the cover to this game looks cool. I want to play this game.
Well, guess what? There was like 3 for a £5 in the bargain bin that I could go buy games for instead.
Those games might not be good, but Lost Among Them may be a game that will help form the basis of my entire personality, or be something that just becomes a core memory. Like I said, me and my little brother just playing Future Cop LAPD, driving around as the cars. And I still remember, like, years later, when I dug out my old PS1 with a friend, and I put that game in, and I still remembered so much of it. I was remembering, like, cutscenes that would happen in the game. That's how impactful that was on my childhood. And it probably fucking sucks, but to me, it's a memory that I treasure.
I mean, that's the thing is, like, I played plenty of good games as a kid, but a lot of the ones you remember and spent a lot of time with were also bad games.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. But, it's the thing we talk about on the channel a lot is sometimes, it's important to consume bad or poor quality media to give you a more rounded view of what quality actually looks like. Right? But, that's a topic for another day. And we need to move on now, Lucas, to the playable characters in the game. And of course, this is a very tropey video game. It hangs a lampshade on some tropes and just fully embraces others. Would you like to hazard a guess at what the group of 5 primary teenagers, what tropes they embody? Because I've already mentioned the jock, and he's like the 6th playable character you play as in the intro. Then you have like 5 characters going to look for him. So I'll give you a couple of guesses to guess what the stereotype is for, one of the 5 characters. And we'll see how accurate you are.
Well, I was just going to guess, is it the Scooby-Doo gang?
Okay, well, what member of the Scooby-Doo gang?
Well, I'm more thinking, is it, the pretty one that's, the one getting caught all the time, the nerdy one, the one that's anxious, the one that's confident.
The pretty one, we have Ashley Thompson, voiced by Tara Platt, the cheerleader, who is also Kenny's girlfriend.
Nothing works in this crummy school.
We're leaving in 5 minutes anyway.
Quit it, Josh. This is no time for that.
And here's the thing about all the characters, they have special abilities. She has the ability, as all teenagers do, to rapid fire a pistol. And deals more damage with weapons. So it's not one-to-one. And then what was the one next one you mentioned after the pretty girl?
The nerdy person.
The nerdy one. Well, we have the stoner and slacker. He's a thief and a hacker. He's able to crack locks easier with more skill and can break into rooms. So that's Stanley Jones, voiced by Scott Hayes.
You would know, of course, that is, like, just Shaggy, because...
That's the Shaggy.
A, anxious and potentially a stoner, but B, a hacker, as we know Matthew Lillard is in the movie Hackers.
In the movie Hackers, yeah, and I feel like that might be a reference there. Because he does have, like, the long, shaggy hair and stuff like that. But, yeah, and that's the thing, his skill doesn't sound that good. It's like, well, one character does more damage, one character breaks into locked rooms, but those locked rooms sometimes contain very useful items.
You could say he's a master of lockpicking.
He is. Oh, the master of unlocking, let's go. He was almost a Stanley sandwich. But any other? So we've got 3 more, like, stereotypes or stereotypical, like, high school movie characters that you can go through. So you've got the pretty girl, you've got, like, the stoner, slacker, hacker, which is kind of 2
so there's
stereotypes,
no, like, specifically, like, nerdy, clever one.
Well, he's the nerd.
He's the closest to.
Yeah.
Okay. So I presume that you mentioned there's a jock at the beginning. I presume that is the jock of the group that's already taken out of the equation.
That's Kenny, as mentioned previously. He's voiced by Liam O'Brien, the varsity athlete and Shannon's older brother, who is blessed with quick speed and a powerful punch. I do believe you encounter him later in the game. He's not quite dead, you just think that he is, and that's why you're looking for him.
I'm guessing there's no giant talking Great Dane.
There's no giant talking Great Dane now, but there is the person who is a coward. You have the cowardly one.
Yeah.
So you have Josh Carter, voiced by Sam Riegel, a shy and reserved reporter for the school paper. He can tell if there's anything left to do in an area, such as item pickups or locations that advance the storyline. And again, doesn't sound like that useful an ability when one of the characters can straight up just fucking do more damage and run faster. But again, just having the ability to just intuit, hey, there's shit in this room we've not picked up yet, it might be helpful.
I'm really starting to get worried.
I know. Aliens beamed him up to their ship, did some experiments on him, and finally killed him.
Josh, please take your seat, young man.
Maybe like the class president.
The overachiever.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have that. You have Shannon Matthews. That is Kenny's smarter, younger sister. But she also is, like, a twist or an inversion on that trope of, like, the smart, nerdy girl. She also dresses provocatively to take the focus away from her fierce intelligence. She provides tips on puzzles and heals others' wounds for them. She is able to heal 20% more with a health item. So that's quite interesting, right? You have the smart, nerdy girl, but she's the one who dresses the most, like, provocatively to hide the fact she's so intelligent, and she's better at puzzles.
Solid, it's a liquid, it's a viscoelastic polymer made of polypeptide chains, but you eat it? I mean, it tastes good.
Why do you do that?
Do what?
Say something super smart and then bail from it?
And you can already see, like, the basis of just a really interesting gameplay loop right there, right? Of switching between these characters to get, like, the right character for the right situation. Ultimately, if you want to make it more challenging, picking the wrong character for the wrong situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm taking a bit of blank on, like, American high school stereotypes for the last potential one, so let me know.
And because we were jumping between all the characters, I'll go through them all once again, just in order, so we're all on the same page. So the playable characters are Josh Carter, the shy and reserved reporter who has the ability to know if there's anything left to do in the area. Stanley Jones, a stoner, slacker, and hacker, who is also a thief and able to crack locks easier. Kenny Matthews, the character you play as at the start of the game and is the impetus for the story to begin, who's the varsity athlete with a quick and powerful punch. Shannon Matthews, his younger sister, who is better able to solve puzzles. Ashley Thompson, the cheerleader who can fire guns. And then finally, Dan, who is a student who is held in prison at the start of the game and is briefly playable for a short moment, but he cannot help the player for long as he immediately gets killed, to set the story along. He does later appear as an escaping mutated experiment.
Right, okay, so I think Dan was the one that we didn't really talk about, but they're not a proper playable character.
He's to introduce you to the concepts of the game, which is the gameplay quirks, which is this next section. So, Obscure plays like many survival horror games, requiring players to find items and weapons and defeat monsters. The game's monsters are deathly allergic to sunlight, so during the daytime parts of the game, players may, and this is one of the interesting twists, and is really interesting for a game released so long ago, you can smash windows to let in sunlight to weaken and kill enemies. And I just thought that was a really interesting gimmick for a game released, quite long ago. Like, you can interact with the environment to make defeating enemies easier, such as, like, smashing windows or running into rooms where there's a window, luring the monster in, then smashing the window. It also saves on ammunition.
And is that a game mechanic that kind of wouldn't work nowadays? Because
I think it could work.
Well, I more mean in the sense that games have gotten more realistic. And when you used to open a light source, and you say break open a window, and one rectangle of light just with very defined lines comes in.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, if that was, say, for example, ray tracing, where it's vaguely lighting up the whole room more, It's like, you can't really build the same kind of traps with a more realistic lighting setup, I guess.
I can see it working, 'cause that's basically like the gimmick to Alan Wake, isn't it? Like, light is the thing that you use to harm and, just scare away the monsters. And he mentions that similar to Alan Wake, flashlights are available to weaken monsters. It also makes for really, creepy atmosphere because you can only see where your flashlight goes. And that's one of the cool things about horror games, where some of them are graphical powerhouses. Like Silent Hill, the entire series basically has pretty much always been consistently one of the best looking games on whatever piece of hardware it happens to be on. Because they just push the technical limitation, whatever hardware they're on. But
are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything, but you forgot that videotape we made.
Because I remember it was like Doom 3. Where Doom 3 was this like weird moment in gaming history where it's a path not taken. Where Doom 3 was, rather than doubling down on graphics, they doubled down on lighting. And it was it didn't work because, players wanted shinier looking things, not necessarily things that were shiny. So, lighting engines kind of like, went by the wayside, and just the push was towards more realistic graphics and physics. But that is interesting, like, lighting is so critical to horror as a genre, and in the medium of video games, it can be utilized in ways that it isn't often utilized in other games, right?
What is that? That's a person. That's a ghost. That is a ghost. It is moving very slowly towards you. I'm not really sure what our options are.
Yeah, I mean, just as we mentioned, things like Alan Wake using a flashlight to just fire as a literal kind of weapon or weakener at enemies. It's like...
and you do need a good lighting engine for that, whereas it's not necessarily that important to other genres, really.
The lighting is good for tone setting in other games and other genres, but not necessarily one where I can think that, like, yeah, maybe in like a Zelda game there's occasional light puzzles using a mirror shield and stuff like that, but they're usually not as integral to an entire gameplay like a game like Alan Wake.
Exactly, yes. And speaking of gameplay and flashlights, Obscure allows players to combine many different items. For example, taping a flashlight to any obtained firearm. And here's the twist, and this is one I think makes Obscure a really interesting game to like think back on, of like, okay, they were trying something new. Like, obviously, they're very reliant on some very well-worn and established tropes, but they're doing something different as well. Like, they've got those tropes as the groundwork, so you enter the game kind of knowing what's going on. It's like, okay, that's the jock, that's the smart girl, that's the cheerleader who can fire guns faster, as is always the case.
Hey, quit fooling around,
and you,
okay?
Why are you hanging around? Is something wrong?
Haven't you seen? In the hallways, there are all these monsters creeping around. It's a real hell.
I don't know what you've been smoking, but you need to stop.
But then it's like, okay, but now we're going to put our twist on that. And the twist in Obscure is players have the ability to control and switch between any of the 5 playable characters entirely on the fly. Given that he or she will be playing in pairs of characters, the other characters will be computer-controlled AI. However, a second player can join in and take over for the computer at any time they wish. And that's the thing that made it so fun. It was like, I was sat watching my mate play it. And he's like, well, you can play if you want. What do you mean? So he just handed me a controller. It's like, okay, now you're that girl. Go. You got a baseball bat, run. What?
It's sulfuric acid. I better be careful.
Yeah, it's really not very common to have just real-time co-op horror games.
Drop in, drop out as well. And the fact as well, I remember that the AI companions aren't great, but they're pretty decent, considering like Dead Rising came out 10 years later, and the AI in that is fucking abysmal. I remember the AI at the very least being helpful in Obscure.
I mean, Dead Rising was only a couple of years later, right?
But still.
That was like 06, but still, yeah, that was an entire like generational leap ahead.
Yes, and he mentions that the game has a 2-player cooperative mode that allows the player to complete the campaign with a friend. However, it only has built-in local co-op. I like that. Only local multiplayer. Oh, remember those days when it only has local multiplayer?
Miss Ashley, what was your reaction when you saw those creatures?
Get lost.
Do you really think you'll get out of here alive?
Don't bug me, okay?
I mean, I think nowadays it sucks if a game is only local or only online. I would always like it to have an option.
It mentions here that, however, the Steam version can be played online via Steam Remote Play. Lucas. Maybe me and you are going to have to play this game at some point on a stream. Potentially at one of our Twitch streams, you can find link below. Twitch.tv/Karlswood and Twitch.tv/Legend of Kanto. And I'm sure as well it's probably like £2 on Steam. Do you want to check how much is it? How much is Obscure on Steam? Have a look for us, and I'm going to put a clip into the game.
Yo, what is this thing?
So far away, Lucas, have you discovered how much a copy of Obscure is on Steam?
Obscure on Steam.
Yes.
Look on it. Oh, it's a £5.
Interesting. Maybe myself and you will do something with this game at some point in the future, but we're still not done with gameplay now. So, Obscure is rather unique in that the game will continue even after a student is killed. And keep in mind, a student can die at any time, meaning it has true permadeath, which makes finishing the game more difficult, though it is entirely possible to finish the game with a single character. Because it also mentions that the 5 playable students do share unique abilities and perks that help them survive specific scenarios. However, none are necessary to complete the game. Each character can perform the same physical acts, even if it takes them longer and or more effort to do so. So you can realistically finish the game with one character, but it's a way easier if all 5 work in tandem, and you're able to freely switch between them and utilise their specific skills and abilities in the scenarios that would require them.
Yeah, it sounds as though it would be very helpful to have someone that's way better at getting inside rooms quicker and things like that.
Yep, and it also mentions here that, although there are only 2 endings to the game, various cutscenes will change depending on which student you are currently playing as. And there's a list of a dozen different scenes that will be different based on which character you're playing as, which adds replayability to the game.
What? It's Miss Wixon. Jeez, looks like it's getting crazy in the infirmary. We better hurry up and help her.
Although I guess that does maybe if they do a Resident Evil dog bursting out a window, it would make it more surprising at least.
The dog bursting out the window is the most terrifying thing ever. It's up there, just looking through the window, and it's boom! I shit myself every time. And in that vein, Lucas, what is the scariest jump scare from a video game that you remember off the top of your head?
Oh,
because I think the dog jumping through the window is one. That's a real common one that a lot of people cite. The other one for me is I always call them the mashed potato zombies in Resident Evil 1. Because the zombies look like mashed potato, but it's the zombie that's in the cupboard in Resident Evil 1. I always hated that because the camera angle is so claustrophobic. 'Cause the zombie takes up so much of the frame, it always scared me.
I mean, obviously just the general presence of Mr. X in RE2 Remake, where just every now and then, sometimes you hear him stomping from a mile away, but every now and then you turn one corner, he's just stood there waiting.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, it's also as well, if we mention Resident Evil, I think we have to talk about the Regenerators, and just their general demeanour. Just the noise, that laboured, ragged breathing of the Regenerators that you hear before you ever see one, and it's so fucking unsettling. Oh, so let's just be quiet for a moment so everyone can hear it.
And then when you find the Iron Maiden ones, where it's oh, now they've got ranged attacks.
Yeah, but the first time one grabs you and it's oh, at least I'm really far away, and it grabs you from a mile away. It's nope. Just learn the piccolo tech in between. It's no, it's so strong. What use would this be on a battlefield? I don't know, but it's fucking terrifying. Oh. So is the one for you? Is it the Regenerator?
I mean, the regenerator's got to be up there as well, right? Just that moment where RE4 goes from, like, relatively, B-movie camp to just, oh no, this is a horror segment.
Just straight up horror, yeah. And I think in Remake, they somehow made it scarier, because I knew the regenerators were coming, and that moment where you're walking through and one just walks past, and even Leon's like, the fuck was that? I was like, I know that's a regenerator. I know I've got 4 bullets. I'm not going. I'm not going. I don't want to fight this. It's like the first times when you shoot a regenerator's leg off and you think, well, at least it's not. Then it jumps towards you like Jeepers Creepers. Do the thing.
Oh god, no. Oh!
There we go. Now run away. Watch this. Oh! That to me is the scariest shit ever.
Just when you shoot every single limb off and they're still like belly flopping their way towards biting you.
An amazing enemy type. And that's one thing I remember about Obscure as well. A lot of interesting enemy designs. Like, not too original, but they get the job done. And finally, Lucas, we have some changes made in the Steam version. So the Steam version, being based on the German-Spanish PC release, doesn't feature most of the improvements mentioned above. So the Steam version is based on the bad version. But it does have differences. For example, the opening credits were cut, as the game is no longer under the publication of Hydravision. The song, Still Waiting by Sum 41, and all the credit songs, like Don't Think the Way They Do by Span and Supersonica by Door Halloween Chilada, among others, depending on the language of the game, are no longer present. Because that was like another thing as well. Different versions of the game got different pop-punk songs.
Well, Karl, I guess we just can't play it through Steam right now, can we?
The music videos of copyrighted songs have been replaced by videos showcasing prototype versions of the game and the game's trailer. So that's the thing as well, they had music videos from Sum 41 in the game, which is such a 2000s thing, right?
Have you heard the new album? No, I haven't heard the new album. I'm sure it's great. All sorts of songs about skateboarding and getting dumped.
Yeah, that's so weird. That's like a Tony Hawk's game thing to do.
Yeah. During the CGI intro scene, the names of the protagonists lack the style that they used to have. So they used to be like Borderlands-style intros to introduce the characters, and then they're all just simple text. Like, speaking of music, it says that, different music plays in different menus, and some songs were cut, presumably for copyright reasons. Moreover, it seems that Mighty Rocket Studios wanted to apply some of the improvements made in the enhanced version to the game. So some other changes include, so they did fix some of the issues mentioned above, or previously, but, knowing which ones is, difficult because there's so many different versions of the game. So, the different things that they changed include a short CGI cutscene of the lights turn off in the dining hall was changed to one of the enhanced version, which shows some other instances of the building to give you more familiarity with what's going on in the entire school.
Oh, okay.
They also changed the animation to a specific character's attack to make it clearer what the character is actually doing.
I like it when my animations tell me what the character's doing.
It seems like it's the character who has the special moves, like the special baseball swinging animation. Seemingly it's like, the baseball swing animation, you always get the super powerful one over and over again, which makes the character super strong.
I mean, they should be, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, it's a cheerleaders wielding 2 guns, which has to be like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reference, right?
I don't know what it is. Like, it seems very weird that specifically the cheerleader is the one that's really good with guns.
Yeah. Maybe
I don't even remember Buffy using guns very much.
There is that one episode. It's probably one of the funniest visual gags in the series. And Buffy's like another character we can talk about one day, where it's just they're talking about this a vampire. It's we can be killed by no weapon forged by man. And I say, well, they said that 400 fucking years ago, and Buffy gets a rocket launcher. Just shoots him with a rocket launcher. It's like, exactly, they didn't anticipate a rocket launcher back in the 1600s, did the dipshit?
Yeah.
No weapon forged can stop me.
That was then. This is now.
Then one final bit of trivia we have here, Lucas, is the story was inspired by the 1998 film The Faculty, a movie where students discover their teachers are all aliens. I might have to add that to my list of things to watch, because that sounds like an interesting premise, and I would love to go watch that Here's a clip.
Now, these 6 students won't just question authority. They'll have to destroy it. Critics are calling it hip and scary. A thrilling ride from beginning to end. The Faculty.
And there we go, Lucas. That is Obscure.
Yeah, maybe the most obscure thing we have literally ever talked about on this channel.
We have indeed, yes. And if anyone else out there has any obscure video game or movie recommendations for the spooky season, you can do so in the comment section below, or go through to our Discord to also recommend some obscure spooky media for myself. I've been your host for this one, Karl Smallwood, joined as ever by the lovely and luscious Lucas Holland, just off camera.
Hell, goddamn, yeah. Remember to go over to the Patreon and vote for what you want to discuss for the rest of spooky season.
Exactly. So, cheers everyone for watching. See you all next time. I almost did it. I almost just pressed like...